I still had the marks on my inner thighs when I slipped into bed beside my husband, his soft breathing a lullaby of ignorance. I had just washed the taste of another man from my mouth. The scent of him still clung to my hair, my skin, my guilt. I lay there rigid, while his arm instinctively found my waist. "You're so warm," he murmured, and I felt a laugh claw its way up my throat. Warm from sin. Warm from sweat and secrets. I closed my eyes and tried to picture the woman I used to be, before desire became a disease. Before he touched me, in the dark and whispered things that made my soul twist and my morals bleed. My phone buzzed under the pillow. A single word. Now. I deleted it without looking. If I stared too long at his name, I might answer. Again. Even after what we did. It didn't start with sex. That's the part no one ever believes. I used to be the woman other women envied. Clean kitchen counters, candle-lit dinners, a man who never raised his voice and kissed my shoulder in the morning like a ritual. I wore matching lingerie not for seduction, but because I liked the order of it. Life was breathable, but now I flinch when the shower runs too hot because it reminds me of how he burned his name into me. Now I jump when my husband says my name too softly, too lovingly. Now I sit in the car for 20 minutes after therapy, staring at the steering wheel, wondering if I told the truth today, or just another version I could live with. The first crack? Maybe it was the miscarriage. I was 34. We'd been trying. I named her in my head, Olive, before the doctor even confirmed the heartbeat. And when the bleeding started, I didn't scream. I sat on the bathroom floor and stared at the red pooling on the white tile, feeling oddly relieved. My husband cried for both of us, but all I could think was, maybe this wasn't meant for me. Maybe motherhood was a costume I never fit into. That same year, I saw my father again. He had remarried, a sweet woman named Lila, younger than me by 6 years. I shook her hand with a smile that felt like a threat. She was pregnant too. Glowing. Honest. Hopeful. I hadn't spoken to my dad in almost a decade. Not since he walked out with nothing but a duffel bag and a stare that said, "You'll understand someday." Maybe I did. Because somewhere between coffee visits and cautious hugs, I began craving something in him I didn't have a name for. He was magnetic, still. The way he carried silence like armor, the way he laughed like it cost him something. I started texting him after wine, stupid things, memories, jokes, then questions. "Do you ever regret leaving?" He never answered that one. Now, present, day. I wear red lipstick even though my husband likes me natural. I keep a burner phone in my glove compartment. I tell my therapist about my emotional detachment, but not the motel room 6 blocks from our home. Every time I sit across from her, I wonder what would happen if I told the truth. If I said, I didn't fall in love with him. I fell into obsession. I fell into my father's arms, and I can't get out. She'd report me, wouldn't she? I would. But the worst part? I still don't know if I want to be saved. The moment everything changed wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, dangerous only in retrospect. It was my father's hands. We were at Lila's baby shower, of all places, sunflowers and streamers and a big cake shaped like a bottle. Lila waddled, around glowing and oblivious, cradling her belly like it was made of glass. My husband had come, stayed long enough to make polite conversation, then left with a headache. I stayed, lingering at the edge of conversations, sipping a mimosa I didn't want, feeling out of place in my own skin. That's when he touched my arm, just above the elbow, a guiding touch, nothing more, to lead me into the kitchen and away from the crowd. But the way his fingers curled, possessive without meaning to be, burned into me like a brand. I stared at the place he touched even after he let go. "You okay?" he asked. His voice had deepened with age, but it still carried that velvet undertone that always made people lean in closer. I nodded. "Yeah, just..." I don't really like parties. He smiled. Small, knowing. You never did. It was that intimacy, that soft, subtle claiming of knowledge no one else could access. He remembered things I had forgotten about myself, like how I hated balloons because the popping gave me anxiety, or how I used to scratch at the inside of my wrists when I was nervous. He remembered me as a girl, but he looked at me now like I was something else, something almost dangerous. And I looked back. That night, I dreamed of his hand again. Not just the touch, the weight of it, the pressure, the way it had lingered too long for a father and not long enough for what I suddenly craved. I told myself it was hormones, residual grief, that miscarriage had turned my brain inside out, that I was looking for comfort in familiar arms, nothing more. But the dreams didn't stop. In one, I was back in the kitchen, only this time he pinned me against the fridge, and I didn't say no. In another, he was in my bed, face obscured, body real. I woke up slick with sweat and shame, staring at my husband's back, wondering who the monster was inside me. I started texting Dad more. Dumb things at first. Saw this and thought of you. Remember when we got lost on that road trip in Oregon? He always responded, always short, never flirtatious, never inappropriate. But I fed off the replies like oxygen. Then one night, when my husband was working late, I called him. I had wine in my hand, red lips, no bra. I wasn't planning anything. I just wanted to hear his voice. Hey, I said when he answered. Do you ever think about how weird this all is? There was a pause. What do you mean? I mean, us. You. Me. Talking again, after all those years. He breathed into the phone like he was choosing his words carefully. Sometimes, yeah. Another pause. The silence felt like a held breath between us. Do you regret anything? I asked. More silence, and then finally, every day. The signed. Way he said it, low, honest, raw, it punched something open in me. I started crying and I didn't even know why. He didn't ask what was wrong. He just stayed on the line. The next day, he dropped off flowers at my door. White lilies. No note. That was the first time I realized I wanted him to want me, not as a daughter, as a woman. I began obsessing, not just fantasizing, but crafting him in my mind. I imagined him watching me undress through a crack in the door. I imagined his hands on my waist in the dark, guiding me somewhere forbidden. I wore perfume I remembered his ex-girlfriend used to wear when I was 12. I started wearing red more often. Lipstick, dresses, lingerie. For him, just in case. He never crossed a line. Not then. But I did. In my mind, in my body. Every night. Desire isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a murmur beneath your skin. A tremble in your hands when they shouldn't be shaking. It's the moment your eyes linger too long. The moment your heart skips for the wrong name. The moment you realize you're not sick, but starving. And I was starving. For him. I stopped knowing what was real when I started pretending everything was. I kept a journal. Not the kind with pink hearts and secrets, but the kind I locked inside a box in the back of my closet, buried beneath old coats and a wedding album we saw hadn't opened in years. I never wrote Dear Diary. I wrote to him. June 4th, 1:07 a.m. You leaned in at dinner tonight to pour me wine and your hand brushed my shoulder. I pretended not to notice. You didn't look at me, but I could. Feel your breath near my ear like a threat. Did you do it on purpose? God, I want you to lose control. I want you to pin me against the wall and make it impossible for me to be good anymore. These entries became nightly rituals, my confessions, my gospel. Sometimes I imagined he read them. Late at night in his own bed, Lila sleeping beside him, belly round and innocent. I imagined him stroking the words, memorizing the curve of my handwriting like it was part of my skin. I imagined him coming to me. It got worse. One morning, I walked into the kitchen half asleep, still wearing the silk slip I used only on weekends when I wanted to feel desired, and for a split second, I saw him at the counter, shirtless, back turned. Frying eggs like this was his house, his kitchen, his life. My heart slammed against my chest. I blinked, and it was only my husband. But the illusion didn't fade. I still tasted his name in my mouth when I kissed my husband's cheek. June 9, 11:44 p.m. Do you know what it does to me when you say my name? You say it like you remember, like it matters, like you never stopped thinking about me. I touch myself to the sound of it. I say it out loud and pretend it's your voice. I began to memorize the way he moved, every tilt of his head, every crease in his shirt, the kind of cologne he wore, something sharp, woodsy, faintly bitter. I bought a bottle online and sprayed it on my pillow. I slept with it pressed against my face, pretending it was his chest. I dreamed of him watching me sleep, fingers tracing my bare spine, whispering filthy things only I could hear. Fantasies turned into habits. Habits turned into compulsion. I started creating scenarios. I'd sit in my car outside his house after dropping off a gift for Lila, a onesie or a card, and imagine him standing in the window, shirtless, watching me, wanting me. One time I stayed there for 20 minutes, gripping the steering wheel like it could anchor me. I had the radio off, just the sound of my breathing, my thighs pressed together. He didn't come out. He never did. But in my head, he opened the door. He pulled me inside. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. June 12th, 2:32 a.m. I would let you ruin me. I think that's what I want. I started hallucinating him in other places. The grocery store. I caught a glimpse of his reflection in the freezer glass. At the gym, I swore he was behind me on the treadmill, close enough to whisper into my hair. I smiled at shadows, laughed at things no one else said. I was losing it, but it felt like waking up. One night, I had dinner with my husband, candlelight, wine, a desperate attempt to pretend like our marriage was still whole. He reached for my hand and I flinched. Not because I didn't love him, I did, in a soft, familiar way, but because in that moment, I wanted it to be him. My dad. June 18th, 12:13 a.m. I think I'm already dead, because no one alive could want this and survive it. Then came the imagined conversations. I'd stand in the mirror, lips painted blood red, and speak to him like he was behind me. You know this is wrong. I know. But you still want me. I never stopped. I'd replay the imagined scenes again and again. Him walking into my house while my husband was gone. Him watching me undress slowly, trembling. The way his hands would look around my neck. Not violent, but possessive. The way he'd hold me after, like he never wanted to let go. I lived in those fantasies. I breathed them. I wrote poetry. Ugly, messy, erotic poetry. Words that made no sense unless you were drowning in want and shame. I deleted all my search history, started using private browsers, looked up articles like, Why Am I Attracted to Someone Forbidden? And Emotional Incest, Signs and Symptoms. I read Survivor. Stories. Then I read erotica with the same theme and hated myself for how deeply I connected to it. It was no longer a desire. It was a possession. I started wondering if maybe he knew, if maybe he wanted me to want him. He had always been distant, emotionally hard to reach, but lately he was calling more, sending little texts, inviting me over to help with the nursery. Remember standing in the doorway of that baby pink room looking at the crib and thinking, this should disgust me. But instead, I imagined him taking me against the wall. Her crib only a few feet away. That thought stayed with me for days. I began dressing for him. Lower necklines, shorter skirts, the kind of heels I never wore anymore. I told myself it was innocent, but I knew. I wanted him to notice, to crack, to break first. June 22nd, 3:19 a.m. If you kissed me now, I wouldn't stop you. If you told me I was sick, I'd believe you, but I'd still let you touch me. The mirror became my confessional. I stood in front of it every night, whispering his name. Not dad, not father, just his name, raw, human, stripped of title. I practiced saying it the way lovers do. One night, I hallucinated him behind me. I swear to God, I was brushing my teeth, and I saw him in the reflection. His hand slid up my waist. He leaned down and whispered, "You're mine." I spun around. Nothing. No one. But I was wet, aching. I touched myself right there against the counter, moaning into the dark, praying no one could hear. I didn't say my husband's name. Not once. When I came, it felt like sin and salvation fused into one. It happened on a Thursday. Not that the day matters, but I remember because I was supposed to be at a dentist appointment. That's what I told my husband when I left the house wearing lipstick and nothing under my dress. I parked 3 blocks from the motel. I was shaking when I walked in. Room 209. He had already checked in. He always moved like that. Decisive, quiet, one step ahead. When I opened the door, he was standing by the window, arms crossed. He turned slowly, his eyes locked on mine. "I thought you wouldn't come," he said. I stepped in, closed the door, didn't answer. Because the truth was, I had already come 100 times in my head. In dreams, in car rides, in the soft sound of his voice during family dinners while I stared at his hands and imagined them gripping my hips. The silence stretched between us. I felt my chest rise and fall like I'd just run a marathon. And then he came toward me. Slowly. Not like a lover, not like a father, like a man unraveling. He didn't touch me at first, just stood close. His breath against my cheek. I could smell the mint on his tongue. The scent of soap. "You don't have to do this," he whispered. I already did. He kissed me. It wasn't tender, it was starved. Teeth, tongue, breathless need. I gasped when his hand slid up under my dress and found nothing but skin. His fingers grazed my thighs, my hips, my stomach. He cursed under his breath. Said my name like it hurt. We didn't make it to the bed at first. He lifted me onto the dresser. My back hit the mirror. I didn't care. My legs wrapped around him like I was trying to fuse our bodies together. And in that moment, I wasn't thinking about guilt. I wasn't thinking about marriage or Lila or the fact that the man inside me was my own blood. I was thinking, finally. Finally, someone touched me like I was made of fire. Like they wanted to burn. But halfway through, as his mouth was on my neck and I moaned into his shoulder, I saw my husband's face. He was smiling, innocent, offering me a glass of water in the kitchen just the night before, touching the small of my back like he still believed I was his. I bit my lip hard, drew blood. "Are you okay?" he asked, slowing down. I nodded, lied, pulled him back into me harder. Because this wasn't about love, it was about erasure. About making myself disappear inside someone who had already abandoned me once. We made it to the bed eventually, clothes in piles, my hair tangled, his fingers inside me like they belonged there. When I came, I cried. Not from pleasure, from grief. I didn't want to say his name, but I did. Over and over, like a chant. After, we didn't speak. He lay on his back, staring at the ceiling. I sat on the edge of the bed, back turned, arms wrapped around my knees. My skin smelled like him. My thighs still trembled. "Do you hate me now?" I asked. He didn't answer. That silence, it screamed louder than anything. I dressed slowly. My body ached in places I hadn't felt in years, not just from the sex, from the truth. He touched my wrist as I reached for the door. "This can't happen again." I nodded. It won't. But we both knew it was a lie. June 28th, 4:04 a.m. I can still feel you inside me. I wash myself 3 times and it doesn't go away. I lay next to him at night, and I wonder how long it will take before he smells you on me. I think I'm becoming something I can't come back from. The second time happened 3 days later. We didn't bother pretending it was wrong. We undressed slowly. This time he kissed my scars, my stretch marks, told me I was beautiful, and that ruined me more than anything. Because love, real love, didn't belong here. Not in this motel room, not between us. But I felt it anyway. Or maybe it was just the closest thing I'd known in years. Afterwards, he kissed my fingers one by one and said, "We're sick." I nodded. But it still feels like truth. And truth was all I had left. It unraveled with a cracked phone screen. Not mine. His. We'd met in the motel again, number 209 like always, and I don't remember who reached for the phone first, but I heard the snap. The screen split down the center like a spider web. I offered to get it fixed. He told me not to worry. But I did. Because I knew what we'd texted, what we'd done. That night, back at home, I sat across from my husband at the dinner table, pushing peas across my plate like a child. He was talking about work, some new hire who couldn't figure out the copier. I nodded at all the right places, smiled, even laughed. But in my head, I saw that phone in his hands, my father's hands, my lover's hands. I didn't sleep. The next morning, I woke up to my husband in the shower, steam curling under the door. I rolled over to check my own phone and saw the message. "You need to delete everything, now." My stomach dropped. I leapt out of bed, fingers trembling, deleting texts, voice notes, photos. My hands moved faster than my brain. Gone. 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 Then another message. I think she saw something. My blood went cold. "Lila." I texted back. "What did she see? What did you say?" No reply. Not for hours. I went to work with my skin crawling. Every face I passed felt like an accusation. Every email notification made my breath catch. And then, my husband called me at 3:42 p.m. He never called me at work. "I need to talk to you." That was all he said. His voice was flat, controlled. That control terrified me more than shouting ever could. When I got home, he was at the kitchen table, laptop open, screen turned toward me. I saw my name in the text bubble, over and over, my words, my filth, my guilt, pixelated and damning. He had accessed the cloud, or maybe he'd seen a notification on my own screen. I'll never know. He didn't yell, he didn't ask questions, he just sat there, staring. "Is this real?" he asked. I didn't answer. Because what could I say? That I'd been fucking my father? That I'd let myself drown in something? Too dark for names? Instead, I collapsed, right there on the floor, hands over my face, sobbing like a child. He stood, walked past me, grabbed his keys. "Don't be here when I get back." And he left. I don't remember how long I lay there. Time folded in on itself. I thought about calling my father, telling him to run, to hide, to end this. But I didn't. Because part of me wanted the explosion. Maybe I was sick. Maybe I'd always been. That night, I drove. No destination, just away. I ended up outside, his house. The nursery light was on. I could see shadows moving inside. Lila and him, probably folding baby clothes or pretending everything was normal. I parked across the street, stared at the house like it was a crime scene. I texted him. He knows. No reply. Then, the front door opened, he stepped out. Alone. He saw me. Walked straight to the car. I rolled down the window. "You shouldn't be here," he said. "I have nowhere else to go." He looked tired, older than I remembered. His hair was damp, his hands stuffed into his pockets like he didn't know what to do with them anymore. "I told you we couldn't do this," he said quietly. "I told you it would destroy us." It already did. He stared at me for a long time. I thought maybe he'd get in the car. Maybe he'd tell me to drive, to disappear with him. But instead, he reached into his pocket and handed me a folded piece of paper. I wrote everything down. I needed to get it out of my head. He walked back inside. I sat in that car for an hour, paper in hand, heart beating out of time. I didn't open it, because I knew whatever it said would ruin the last piece of me that still believed we had a future. Instead, I drove. Back to the motel. Back to room 209. I lay on the bed fully clothed, staring at the ceiling, waiting for guilt to crush me. It never came. Only silence. Only the echo of a name I could never say out loud again. It's been 6 weeks since the world burned down. The papers came yesterday. Divorce finalized. A quiet envelope slid through the mail slot like a death certificate. I didn't cry. I made coffee, sat on the floor with my back against the fridge, and read every word 3 times. There was no mention of why. No place on the form for confessions that don't belong in court. I still wear my ring, not out of love, out of habit. Out of guilt. Sometimes I touch it during the day like a talisman, like I'm reminding myself that I used to be someone else, someone whole. I don't speak to him anymore. My father. He sent one final message. This never happened. Stared at those 4 words for a long time, then deleted them, because we both knew it did happen. Every kiss, every bruised thigh, every whispered, "I need you," they happened. And now they live in me like a second skin. Lila had the baby last week. A girl. I haven't seen her, but I dream about her. Sometimes, in those dreams, I'm holding her. She looks up at me with his eyes, and I wake up gasping, hands clenched, wet between my legs and ashamed of it. I walk a lot now, at night mostly, through neighborhoods I don't recognize where no one knows my name. I make up stories about the houses I pass, who lives inside, what secrets they're keeping. Sometimes I imagine knocking on a door, telling the woman inside, I broke my life into pieces and swallowed them. Do you think I'll survive it? But I never knock. I just keep walking. Last night, I passed a window where a man was brushing a little girl's hair. She looked so much like me when I was 7 that I had to stop. I watched them for a long time, like a ghost peering in. And I thought, maybe in another life, I was her. Maybe in another life, he just stayed my father. The streetlight flickered overhead. I turned away and kept walking into the dark, where I belong, where no one ever asks the kind of questions I can't answer.